The Girl by Leah V. Art by Sammy J. The Girl, Part 1, The Valley by Leah V. Prologue. The first time she went up, she was a very young girl. She was seemingly plucked up out of nowhere and placed in the center of two very large hands. So large were the hands, they seemed to go on and on forever. She could see no end to them. All around her, above and below, lay the cosmos, planets, stars, and galaxies in all various shapes and colors. All were whizzing past her at a rapid rate, as if she were moving at light speed inside these infinite hands. But she could see every detail of each galaxy as it passed by on display for her. There were hundreds, or even thousands maybe. They were impossible to count, so great were their number. Beautiful and wonderful to behold, their light captured and permeated her entire being. She felt invigorated, humbled, and infinitely loved all at the same time. Such a large universe, such a small girl, all in such capable hands. This is where it all began. Chapter 1. How did she get here? How? For now, that question will remain unanswered, but what happened there will be fully divulged. She found herself in a clearing, a beautiful expanse of meadow, green and golden, glistening and blowing in the sunlight. A warm, soft breeze lulled everything in ease and comfort. Alive. Something about this place felt alive, and it wrapped itself around every part of her being. Comfort and peace as she had never felt before warmed and softened her to her very core. She lifted her face in the soft breeze to look up at the sky. She was startled at the realization that she was not just in a soft meadow, but a valley, with large mountains encompassing her on every side. Tall mountains rising straight up from the valley floor. Snow capped the tops of all of them. She sighed with relief at their sight, for they made the meadow feel safe, protected, and impenetrable. These mountains seemed the protective gates around this beautiful valley. Or better yet, the protective warriors. She spun around and around, looking in every direction. She smiled as her arms began wrapping themselves around her body, the spin becoming something of a dance. She laughed out loud. Now, this is somewhere I would like to stay. And so, she did. Chapter 2. In the valley, the girl awoke to the warmth of the sun on her face. Beside her ran a creek, bright blue and clear. She surmised its genesis began atop one of the distant mountains that lay protective above her. This creek quickly became one of her favorite resting spots. Its song lulled in her ear, and its scent was clean and clear. Short, soft grass lay beneath her as she stretched out on her belly. The friendly sun surrounded her as her hand wistfully strummed and played in the creek beside her. The clear, bright water was cool and refreshing on her hand. The creek brilliantly sparkled in the sun, almost as if it were made of some sort of liquid gemstone, unbeknownst to her. And the sun, it was always around her, warm, soft, and comforting. It glistened off of anything that would listen, but the source of its light she could not quite pinpoint. She assumed it was in the sky above, but it seemed to be all around her, and in all places at all times. This was a fleeting thought for understanding in this place, though, for all she really cared about was the deep peace that surrounded her at all times, and the beauty that lay all around. So she would just lay there in that valley, resting in its light. The longer she lay by that creek, she began to observe that not only did the water glitter and dazzle like jewels, but it also seemed to sing a song. It was a soft humming verse that seemed to be sung just for her. She heard it say, "Stay, stay here and play." And that was her exact intent. In fact, she planned to stay in that valley forever. Chapter 3. Not only was there a singing creek in this valley and a sun with an unseen force, but there also grew a lone tree. This was no ordinary tree, but an apple tree with bright red, shining apples upon it. Any time she ate these apples, she was filled with such peace. It was a peace she had never experienced before, as she swallowed them into her belly. That peace of which she partook would warm her from the inside out. It tickled as it radiated back out of her. She often wondered, are these apples made of light? For they seem to make me shine. But again, thoughts for understanding were fleeting in this place. She was mostly content to just enjoy everything that was around her. After eating its fruit, she always climbed in the branches of the tree. She would swing upside down from her legs, laughing and radiating as she rocked back and forth, back and forth. Other times, she would scoot in close to the base of the tree, under its shade, to sit on the ground and lean against the trunk. She was friends with this tree, and it was friends with her. In fact, they were both quite fond of each other. But I don't want you to think these objects, the creek and the tree, were her only companions, for other creatures would soon begin their visits to her in the valley. Chapter 4. One day, to her surprise, a large golden lion came walking down the path towards her. It seemed strange, as she had never noticed a path in the valley here before. Yet there it was. Golden and winding, it seemed to stretch all the way down the valley floor, finding its way between two of the mountains that lay far off in the distance. For a moment, she wondered where this path between the two mountains might lead, but the thought lingered for only a moment. During the course of these thoughts, the lion drew closer. There was no fear in this valley. Certainly, this lion also invoked no fear in her. His kind eyes and gentle smile instantly put her at ease and filled her with joyful anticipation at his approach, so much so that she began running out towards him. At the sight of the girl running, the lion began to laugh with joy. As they met, the girl instantly wrapped her arms around the lion's neck and buried her face in his soft, wild mane. She instantly felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. It was as if she had known this creature from long ago. She breathed in his sweet, wild scent and whispered into his mane, "I've been waiting for you." He smiled with a slight, deep purr and said, "Yes, I know, and I for you." The lion came to visit her almost every day. They were instant best friends, and the girl loved it when he was there with her. Sometimes they would go on long walks by the creek and talk. They also loved to sit under the shade of the apple tree and partake together in its fruit. But her favorite thing to do with the lion was to run and play. Together they would run wild through the golden fields of the valley floor. They ran and ran as fast as they could go, skipping, jumping, and spinning along the way. There was nothing so wild and so free as the lion's play. During these runs, they laughed as if someone tickled them with each step. One day, the girl asked to hear the lion's roar. Mid-stride, he opened his large mouth. With his head and mane shaking back and forth, he unleashed the enormity of his roar. The girl stopped in her tracks at the shockwave of its sound. She seemed to be able to watch as his roar rolled and echoed, carrying itself through the valley floor and making its way up to the tops of the mountains high above. The girl stood in awe and wonder at the raw terror and power the lion had unleashed. The lion came to stand next to her. The last of the echoes rang through the sky. He seemed so grand and majestic, powerfully beautiful, as she looked at him standing next to her. She loved him more now than she had before. She turned to look at him, a curious glimmer in her eyes, and then she was off running again. The lion laughed and took off after her, but this run was different. She seemed to still feel the vibration of his roar ringing inside her. It seemed to empower her to run faster than she ever had before. Oh, what a friend she had found in this lion. Lest she forget and ever think that he were just her plaything, he would smile at her with a wink in his eye and let out another shattering roar. It would always stop her right in her tracks, and she loved it every single time. Chapter 5. Every once in a while, another creature meandered his way into the field to visit the girl. His path came from a different direction, opposite that of the lion's. Who was this visitor, you may ask? The ox. The ox's size was more than twice that of the lion's, but he had the same golden red color and the same kind eyes. His fur was soft and long, blowing like ripe wheat in the field. He had 2 large horns jutting out from both sides of his head, softly curling upwards slightly towards the sky. Whenever he came to visit the girl in the valley, it was always for a nice long rest. He would find a place hidden in the shelter of the golden fields of the meadow, and he would slump his large mass down for a nice long rest in the grass, basking in the warmth of the sun. The ox was always especially happy when the girl followed him down. She was perfectly content to lay her head on his enormous side, lost in the gold that surrounded her. Golden grass, golden fur, golden sun. It was a golden rest. The strength of the ox was comforting, to say the least. His kind gentleness seemed to radiate from his strength. But behind the kind, gentle eyes, she couldn't help but notice a type of sadness. There was a deep longing and loneliness deeper within. It caused her to pull him closer and stay a little longer by his side whenever he came to visit. She somehow wanted to ease this pain, or to lift the heavy burden she felt lay upon him. She often wondered what all his strength was for. What large burden did he carry that would cause him to seek refuge and rest here in this place with her? One day she asked him as much. He replied, "I have come from ploughing the fields, for they will soon be ripe with harvest. I must make ready the way and break up and furrow the hardened ground." He had a faraway look in his eyes as he continued, "It is a work of love. There is much to do, and sometimes I am the only one there to do it. I tirelessly work. I will not stop, not until all has been complete. I am faithful to finish and do that which must be done." He turned to her, his expression softening in kindness towards her. "Sometimes I sneak away just for a moment to rest here with you, for you are also one that I love, and every ox needs his day of rest." He finished with a twinkle in his eye, laying his heavy head back down in the field. His breath was deep and warm as it blew in her face, and he entered into his rest. With that, the girl's heart swelled with love for her strong, burdened ox. Chapter 6. Up until this point, the girl's time in the valley had been tranquil and filled with only peace and joy. That is, until the lion came for his very last visit to the valley. It had been a few days since the girl had any visitors. She sat on the bank of the creek, her legs dangling over the edge with only her feet submerged in the refreshing water below. She barely noticed the song of the creek that day. Her mind was lost in thought, and its focus lay upon her ox. She thought about him and his kind, sad eyes. She also did not notice that the lion had approached from behind her. He had grown accustomed to her normal running greeting, but today he quietly came to sit down beside her on the creek's bank. He began to softly purr, his tail swishing back and forth. She finally glanced over, acknowledging his presence, her face still very serious. "You are deeply contemplative this day, child. Pray do tell me what seems to have captured your heart. So? I take it we shall not be going for our playful run today." She turned her head up to the lion, with a stiff smile at his small joke. She began to tell him of her friendship with the ox. She described the image of the burden he carried in his eyes. In fact, it was that image that caused her to be sitting by the creek this day, feeling mesmerized and hardly able to move at the thought of those same eyes. The lion listened lovingly as the girl expressed her love and compassion for this large, kind and hard-working creature. The lion and the girl stayed sitting by that creek for quite some time. The girl remained quiet and brooding. Finally, the lion spoke up, saying, "Clearly, this is very upsetting for you. So, what if I told you there was a way for you to help this ox of yours?" The girl looked up at the lion, tears ready to break forth at the sound of the slightest hint of hope. She waited with bated breath for him to continue. "But what if I also told you that helping him would mean you would have to leave this place? Leave this valley that you have grown to love so very much." With that, the girl's face began to look very conflicted. She desperately wanted to help the ox, but she loved this valley, and on numerous occasions had said she would never ever leave it. Slowly, she began to feel fear for the first time since arriving in the valley. The lion, watching the conflict she was in, gently said, "Don't you ever wonder where I come from down that path between the two mountains, or what lay beyond them? Don't you ever wonder where the ox goes when he has to leave the rest by your side?" And even gentler still, he said, "Don't you ever wonder where you came from before you came to abide here in this valley?" The lion's words began ringing around her. A flood of memories and emotions from a faraway place began rushing in all around. Some of them were good and pleasant, but a larger portion of them were full of pain, fear, anger, and uncertainty. The negative emotions began to overwhelm her. Wave after wave of them swept over her until she began to feel as if she were lost and drowning inside of them all. She could not find her way out of this raging sea of emotions that had suddenly engulfed her. All the while, she could hear the voice of the lion in the background saying to her, "I want you to come with me. I want to take you to my father's house in the city that lay beyond this valley. It is only there that you will find a way to truly help your oxen friend. It is the only place that will give you the answers to the other questions that are raging around you right now. I will not force you to leave this valley. It is a choice that you alone must make. But I cannot keep visiting you here like this. There is a purpose for which you were brought to this place, and it is bigger than this valley. The valley is meant for rest and for healing. If you stay here for too long, you will find that resting in the light soon turns into living in the shadow of a deep and lonely selfishness. You are meant for far more than this. So please, come away with me. I will take you to my father's house in the city that lay beyond the two mountains. Fear gripped the girl as she tried to imagine leaving the valley. The only thing she knew about her past was that it was full of some sort of pain to which she did not wish to return. What would she find in the city with the lion? Potentially more pain and uncertainty. All she knew for sure was that when she was in the valley, she was surrounded by comfort and joy. I can't! Don't make me go! Don't make me leave this place! She threw herself to the ground, face buried in the green grass of the meadow as she cried and cried. I can't! Don't make me leave this place! For the first time since her arrival, night fell in that valley. The stars came out to play. They danced and they shone in a celestial symphony above her. They seemed to tell the story of the battle that raged inside her heart. With each tear that fell, and as she slowly drifted off into dreams, the stars told of the drama that was about to unfold. Chapter 7. She awoke the next morning to the sight of a horse drinking water from the creek that lay next to her. She sat up staring at him as she rubbed the sleepiness away from her eyes. She saw the horse was mostly white and dappled with dark grey spots all over his tall, muscular body that was accompanied by a light grey mane and tail. He lifted his head from his drink, looking at the awakened girl, and proclaimed, "That was quite a battle here last night, nay? Did you see the stars darting to and fro? They were quite busy, were they not? Do you happen to know what it all was for?" Standing to her feet, her head slightly dropped in remorse, she replied, "Yes, I think it all must have been about me, I'm afraid." "Well," said the horse, nodding a bit in agreement, "you must have come to some sort of decision then. Otherwise, I would not have been able to break through to be here with you now. But please forgive me. Where have my manners gone? I have yet to introduce myself to you. I am called Nissi, and I have been sent here to strengthen you and to help you accomplish that which you cannot do on your own." The girl lifted her head and stood up a bit taller at this information. A large smile broke over her face as she sighed with relief. "Oh, good! In fact, I do have a long journey ahead of me. Only, I don't quite know the way, and it seems so very far away from here. Do you think you could help me get to where I am going?" The horse leapt up out of the water and onto the grassy bank beside her. With a gleeful smile, he replied, "Journeys happen to be my specialty. Before we depart, pray, do tell me your name." The girl paused, thinking hard for a moment. Her name. But it was nowhere to be found. She apologized to the horse that she had no answer for him. Perhaps it is one of the answers the lion promised I would find if I chose to go with him to his city. Chapter 8. Of all the runs she had ever been on with the lion, none of them had prepared her for the ride she took on the back of that dappled horse. Less like a run and more like flying, the horse carried the girl down the path in the direction the lion had always come from, towards the city. She clung to the grey mane of the horse, her face buried in his strong, muscular neck. The sound of his hooves thundered down the path. She focused on their sound as he carried her faster and faster toward their destination. They seemed to fly, and with each stride the horse made, the girl's heart strengthened. What she had feared would be difficult and painful had proved to be joyfully exhilarating. she had not been made to muster the strength for the journey on her own. The addition of the horse and his quickening ability to her situation had changed everything. Hope began to rise inside of her, that what lay ahead in the city would prove to be the same, not something to dread, but something to behold. Her grip upon the horse's mane turned more into a warm embrace. So grateful was she for the friendly help that had been sent her way, and not just for the fact that the horse could carry her the whole journey, but more for the strength his presence had poured into the weak places of her heart. This helped her to brace for that which might lie ahead at the end of the path. With that realization, she saw the base of the two mountains approaching. That ends our adventure for today of The Girl, Part 1, The Valley. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, as next time we will conclude the adventure with The Girl, Part 2, The Golden City. The full story in book form can be purchased on Amazon. Just click the link provided.